Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating intellectual odyssey. We're exploring one of the most, well, unexpected collaborations in modern thought. Imagine this, a Nobel laureate physicist, a giant of science, grappling with such deep inner turmoil that he actually turns to a pioneering psychologist for help.
And it sounds like fiction, right? But it's the true and quite extraordinary story of Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Jung.
Exactly.
And this wasn't just, a standard therapy situation. It blossomed into this decades-long intellectual partnership.
Wow.
Yeah, documented through their letters. And they really dared to explore these deep connections between the objective world, physics, and the subjective realm of the psyche.
That's our mission today, really, to trace this remarkable, sometimes pretty challenging dialogue. We want to uncover how these two titans investigated the profound links between mind and matter.
And how their big ideas think symmetry, archetypes, even that tricky concepts of synchronicity, how they intersected.
Right, and also how their own personal struggles sort of mirrored their groundbreaking theories. So, for you listening, you'll get a shortcut to understanding a collaboration that, honestly, reshaped our view of reality.
And we're drawing all this from their amazing correspondence, letters spanning from 1932 right up to 1958, plus, of course, some really insightful scholarly work that helps illuminate it all.
Okay, so to really get this, we need to understand the people involved. Let's start with Wolfgang Pauli. Brilliant, but definitely troubled.
A prodigy, no question. Born in 1900, his godfather, Ernst Mach.
Ernst Mach, the philosopher of science. It's quite a start.
It really is. And Pauli studied with the greats Sommerfeld, Max Born, he debated Niels Bohr, and by 1924, he'd already formulated his exclusion principle.
The exclusion principle. Can you remind us why that's so important?
Oh, it's absolutely foundational. Quantum mechanics relies on it. It basically explains how electrons arrange themselves in atoms.
So, why stuff has structure?
Exactly. Why atoms work, why chemistry happens, why the world is, well, solid. It's that fundamental. He got the Nobel for it in 1945, and he also came up with the idea of the neutrino.
The ghost particle.
That's the one. So you have this incredible scientific mind shaping our understanding of the universe.
But, and this is the kicker, his inner world was, well, a mess. A stark contrast.
Total contrast. Despite the genius, his personal life was marked by deep fragmentation, dissociation. Within just 1 year, his mother tragically died by suicide.
Oh, wow.
And his first marriage was very brief and deeply troubled. So here he is, just 30 years old, this giant of physics, and he's seeking help for profound inner chaos.
His outer world governed by elegant physics, but inner chaos. That's quite a picture.
And into that chaos steps Carl Jung. Born 1875, already a foundational figure in psychology, he'd published Psychologische Typen back in 1921.
And he traveled a lot, didn't he? Studying indigenous cultures.
He did. The Pueblo people in America, the Alguni tribes in Kenya. He was looking for universal patterns in the human mind, these sort of deep psychological structures.
So what were Jung's key ideas that really resonated with Pauli, or helped him?
Well, Jung had picked up on William James's ideas about coexisting consciousness. James called it the upper self and under self. And also James's concept of psychic fields.
Psychic fields.
Yeah, the idea that the mind isn't just contained in the brain. And crucially, Jung saw dreams and, spontaneous fantasies not as random noise, but as the psyche's way of trying to balance things out.
Like compensating for something missing.
Exactly. Retrieving knowledge, trying to reestablish equilibrium, especially when there's some kind of inner split or damage. He thought they were vital for healing.
Okay, so how did this actually work in practice?
Yeah.
How did Jung approach analyzing a mind like Pauli's, so rigorous, so scientific?
Well, it wasn't an immediate jump into analysis with Jung himself. First, Pauli spent 5 months with one of Jung's assistants, Dr. Erna Reisenbaum. Then, interestingly, he spent 3 months doing intense self-analysis, trying to apply Jung's methods to himself.
Really?
Yeah. And then he finally started working directly with Jung for 2 whole years.
2 years. And I read Jung analyze something like 1,300 of Pauli's dreams.
An astonishing number, yes, 1,300. And Jung used them extensively for his own research, particularly looking at alchemical symbolism showing up in a modern scientific mind.
So Jung got a lot out of this, too.
Immensely. He saw a unique window into the unconscious of a highly developed scientific intellect. It became foundational for some of his later theories, especially connecting psyche and matter.
And Pauli, meanwhile, was applying Jungian ideas to himself, seeing it as part of his quest for a unified field. not just in physics, but inside himself.
Precisely, trying to heal that fragmentation.
So the really profound thing, the thing that bound them, was how they started bridging these seemingly separate worlds. They found these concepts that kind of resonated in both physics and psychology.
Yes, let's talk about complementarity. That's a key one. William James, the psychologist, had actually identified and named this idea first in psychology.
The principles of psychology.
Yeah, exactly. And then, remarkably, Niels Bohr borrows the term.
The physicists.
Yeah, Bohr borrows it from James for his principle of complementarity in quantum theory. You know, the idea that some properties like wave nature and particle nature can't be seen at the same time, but you need both for a full picture.
Okay, so psychology to physics.
And then Jung applies it back to the psyche, the interplay between conscious and unconscious, for instance. And Pauli generalizes Bohr's physics idea even further, connecting particle and wave interpretations through statistical correspondence.
So it's not just borrowing words. It's like they were grappling with the same fundamental problem. How do you hold contradictory truths together in one reality?
That's exactly it. Which leads us to Jung's psychoid concept.
Ah, yes, the psychoid. A bit elusive, that one.
It is. Jung's idea of a realm where mind and matter aren't really separate, but form a continuum, like a base layer of reality that's neither purely mental nor purely physical, something we can only partly grasp.
And Pauli takes this even further.
He does, with his concept of the Unus Mundus, the one world. Pauli, remember, the hardcore physicist, is suggesting that ultimate reality isn't particles, but this deep, unified field where mind and matter originate together.
That's radical for a physicist back then.
Absolutely. He thought the material world we see is just a manifestation of something deeper, this domain of symmetry itself.
Symmetry was huge for Pauli, wasn't it? He called it the archetypal structure of matter.
He did. He was drawn to its beauty, its simplicity, its inevitability in physics, that feeling of things just fitting perfectly.
And Jung's archetypes fit right into this.
Perfectly. Jung saw archetypes as these fundamental ordering operators or image formers in the psyche. Think of them like universal blueprints.
Blueprints.
For instincts, myths, symbols. And Jung even suggested they shape how we frame scientific questions. They provide the sort of necessary mental structures for creating theories.
Wow. Okay, but maybe the most mind-blowing convergence was in Pauli's dreams. You mentioned Jung analyzed hundreds.
Yes, and the content was astonishing. They weren't just vague symbols. Pauli's dreams often spoke in explicit physics terms.
Like what?
Things like radioactive nucleus, isotopes, spectral line splitting, even wave or oscillation symbols, all used to represent psychic processes.
That's incredible. His unconscious was using the language of his profession.
And Pauli's interpretation was key. He didn't think it was just metaphor. He called it unconscious physics flowing from his psyche.
Not just reflecting his work, but actively generating physics concepts.
He seemed to think so. He felt his unconscious was almost taking something away from psychology, trying to ground it more physically, maybe to relieve psychology of its burden, as he put it.
So for you listening, think about that. How might your own inner world use symbols from your work, your life, reflecting maybe deeper objective patterns?
It's a fascinating thought. Another huge point of contact for them was numbers.
Numbers. How so?
Both Pauli and Jung were deeply intrigued by the mysterious nature of numbers. They saw them as potentially fundamental to both physics and psychology, almost like a universal language bridging the quantitative outer world and the qualitative inner one.
Jung even called the archetype itself the probability of psychic events, right? Seeing numerical patterns in psychological structures.
Exactly. It shows how deep the overlap could get. Even if their methods, weren't always aligned, they were both hunting for fundamental patterns. Numbers seemed key.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were definite points of tension. Synchronicity was a big one.
Oh yes, Jung's famous concept.
Defined as a meaningful, a causal connection, like his famous scarab beetle story. Patient dreams of a golden scarab, actual scarab beetle, taps on Jung's window right then.
A classic example. But Pauli, the physicist, had, quote, grave misgivings.
Why? What was his issue?
Well, the precision. He questioned terms like a causal and time. He argued that even physics is a causal events like radioactive decay.
Unpredictable for a single atom.
Right. He saw that as just a weak generalization of old causality. Crucially for Pauli, those physical events lacked the meaning that Jung insisted was central to synchronicity.
So radioactivity is random, but
Yeah.
not meaningful in Jung's sense.
Exactly. And Pauli also drew a line between Jung's synchronicity and things like the Rhine experiments, ESP, psychokinesis. He saw those as different, lacking the deep archetypal basis he felt was necessary for true synchronicity. Maybe more about, latent human abilities, not this cosmic mind-matter link.
Interesting distinction. So how did Jung respond to Pauli's need for such rigor? How did he defend the meaning aspect?
Jung really saw synchronicity as bubbling up from the Unus Mundus, that point where physical and psychic reality touch in a meaningful, but not classically causal way. For him, the meaning, driven by the archetype, was the point, something physics just wasn't equipped to measure.
There was also this psychologism debate, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Pauli pushing back.
Yes, Pauli noted Jung's tendency, comparing him to King Midas, to turn everything he touched psychic and only psychic. Pauli resisted that.
He didn't want everything reduced to psychology.
Right. And his own dreams, speaking in physics terms, seemed to back him up. He saw it as evidence of physics flowing back from psychology, not just being explained by it. It was a pushback against reducing everything to inner states.
Pauli even had a pretty bold prediction about the future, didn't he? About physics and psychology.
He did. He thought psychology might eventually be adopted by physics, sort of like chemistry had been subsumed into physics earlier.
Wow. Physics absorbing psychology.
Yeah, he believed physics, with its broader conceptual system, would need to change radically in the process, but that it would ultimately provide the framework.
And Jung's counter.
Jung proposed something quite different, a psychic relativity of mass, time, and space. He used this to try and explain things like psychokinesis, suggesting maybe physical laws like mass could behave, well, differently depending on the psychic state.
Contingently.
Yes, contingently. He thought the singular nature of the archetype might even suspend normal causality sometimes. It really opens up questions about whether consciousness actively shapes reality in ways our science doesn't yet account for.
And Pauli wasn't afraid to criticize Jung's own institute, was he?
Not at all. He had serious concerns about the scientific standards at the C.G. Jung Institute. He felt they weren't rigorous enough in teaching or therapy. He wanted independent scientific psychological research outside of just medical practice. He criticized what he saw as an assembly line industry in some analysis, lacking real intellectual depth.
Strong words. But perhaps the most profound convergence, where their ideas almost seemed to meet in reality, came with two shocking discoveries around the same time.
Absolutely. First, in 1957, physics was rocked by the discovery of parity violation.
Parity violation. What did that mean, practically?
It meant that a fundamental assumption about symmetry in nature was wrong. Experiments of C.S. Wu, T.D. Lee, Xian Yang, looking at things like beta decay of cobalt-60.
Okay.
They showed that the universe, at the level of the weak nuclear force, can tell the difference between left and right. It's not perfectly mirror symmetrical.
So if you watch a weak interaction in a mirror, it doesn't look the same as the real thing.
Exactly. Which was a huge shock. Physicists had assumed mirror symmetry, parity conservation, for 30 years. Pauli, who loved symmetry, felt betrayed.
Betrayed by nature.
In a sense, yes. This discovery led to that famous phrase, God is a weak left-hander, because particles involved in the weak force, like neutrinos, show a definite preference, a handedness.
Okay, so Pauli is reeling from this loss of physical symmetry. What's Jung focused on at almost exactly the same time?
Unbelievably, UFOs.
UFOs.
Seriously.
Seriously, he was deeply analyzing the phenomenon, not necessarily believing in aliens, but trying to grasp the psychological meaning of these sightings and reports.
And what was his take?
His conclusion was fascinating. He saw UFOs as a kind of projected, concretized symbolism of the individuation process. Humanity's collective psyche projecting its striving for wholeness onto the skies.
Okay. But how does that connect to Pauli's left-handed God?
Here's the connection. Jung also interpreted the UFO phenomenon as pointing to a slight left-handedness in God, but in the psychological sense.
Psychological left-handedness.
Meaning a statistical predominance of the unconscious. For Jung, the unconscious held the key, the redeeming third archetype, that could unite opposites and lead towards wholeness, but a wholeness that wasn't perfectly balanced or symmetrical.
So, Pauli sees asymmetry in fundamental particles. Jung sees a related asymmetry emerging in the collective unconscious via UFO symbolism. At the same time. Precisely. The timing is uncanny. Both grappling with fundamental asymmetry, one in physics, one in psychology, it feels like. Well, almost like a synchronistic moment reflecting a deeper shift in understanding reality itself.
A profound echo across disciplines.
It's as if the universe, or the collective unconscious, was whispering the same secret to both of them in their own languages. Reality isn't perfectly symmetrical. There's a bias, a handedness.
So this deep dive into the Pauli Jung letters, it really shows this incredible, intense dialogue pushing the limits of both fields.
Definitely. They tackled the biggest questions. The nature of reality, the mind-matter link, the role of hidden patterns, whether you call them physical laws or archetypes.
And it changed them, didn't it? It offered this vision of a unified reality they couldn't have reached alone.
Pauli, who basically fathered the neutrino concept, died in 1958, not long after this parity crisis. He came to believe our world was becoming quaternary, acknowledging good and evil, rational and irrational, integrating the opposites.
And Jung, too, foresaw a new form of religion emerging from integrating these opposites.
So here's the final thought for you. If the universe itself, through the weak force, shows this fundamental left-handedness, this asymmetry, what subtle asymmetries, maybe even psychic ones, are playing out in our own lives?
In society, and how consciousness is evolving.
Exactly. What are the overlooked weak interactions shaping our reality in ways we're maybe just starting to notice, pushing us towards a more whole but maybe inherently asymmetrical understanding of ourselves and everything else?
A lot to ponder. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.